I wasn't supposed to be home that morning. The plan was to meet a new client across town, grab lunch near the river afterward, maybe even stop by my sister's to help her with the shelves she'd been bugging me about for weeks. But the meeting got canceled last minute, and I found myself driving toward home with a coffee in one hand and a croissant writing sh*tg*n, thinking I might surprise Roxanne. We hadn't spent much time together lately, different schedules, mounting stress, the usual stuff you promise won't eat away at you until it does. I missed her, plain and simple. Thought maybe today could be one of those easy, spontaneous mornings we used to have. But the second I stepped inside, everything shifted. It was the stillness that hit me first. Our house was never this quiet. Even when Roxanne was alone, she had music on, low jazz murmuring in the background, or a podcast playing while she tidied up. But that morning? Nothing. Just silence thick enough to feel like static in the air. Then came the sound. Quick, deliberate footsteps across the hardwood. Not heavy like mine. Lighter. Quieter. Followed immediately by the bathroom door slamming shut, not closing, not creaking, slamming, like someone was trying to shut out the world in a single motion. I froze in the entryway, still holding the coffee tray, staring down the hallway like I'd stumbled into someone else's home. My pulse began to pick up, fast and uneven. I wasn't sure why at first. Maybe I knew before I knew. I set the coffee down gently on the kitchen counter and walked slowly through the living room. That's when I saw it. A jacket, navy, tailored, clearly expensive, draped over the back of the armchair like it belonged there. Only it didn't. It was unfamiliar, completely out of place. Too polished for one of my friends. Too masculine to be one of hers. I moved toward it instinctively, like I needed proof this wasn't mine. I touched the fabric. Soft wool, slightly damp from the morning drizzle. Inside the pocket was a slim silver pen and a receipt from a gas station across town. The timestamp said 8:37 a.m. Roxanne doesn't even wake up before 9 most days. My heart was racing now, the thud in my chest so loud it felt like it echoed off the walls. I wasn't jumping to conclusions, not yet, but something in my gut clenched tight, like it already knew the ending of a story I hadn't even started reading. I barely had time to process it before I heard her voice. "Oh," Roxanne said, rounding the corner with a practiced calm that was instantly suspicious. "You're back early." She wasn't flustered. Not even a little. Her tone was smooth, her posture relaxed. She was wearing one of my old college sweatshirts, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely tied back like she'd just come down from brushing her teeth. She glanced toward the jacket, then back at me, and that's when I noticed the flicker, not fear, exactly. More like calculation. A brief, nearly invisible pause before the performance resumed. "That," she said, nodding toward the jacket like I'd asked. "Oh, that's Jeremy's." He dropped by to pick up his phone charger. Said he was headed to his girlfriend's and didn't want his battery dying. Jeremy. Her cousin. The guy I'd met once at a wedding who barely made eye contact. I remembered him being shorter, stockier, with a loud laugh and terrible taste in whiskey. He didn't strike me as the type to wear Italian wool or carry engraved pens. And even if he had swung by, why the hell would he take off his jacket and leave it behind? I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She smiled, warm and unbothered. "You want breakfast?" she asked. I was just about to make toast. Just like that, the scene was over. Closed curtain. No explanation offered, none asked for. But the air between us had shifted. Heavier now? Denser. I nodded slowly, like I believed her, even though the silence in the bathroom screamed louder than anything else in the house. Toast? Really? I didn't confront her. I didn't storm into the bathroom or call her bluff. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table while she moved around, making clinking sounds with plates and opening the fridge like nothing had happened. I watched her closely, the way she moved, the way her voice held steady. It was all too smooth. Too careful. She passed me a plate with 2 slices of toast and a little dish of jam, like we were in some weekend breakfast montage. I murmured a thank you, trying not to show how my hands trembled when I reached for the fork. I looked toward the hallway where the bathroom door was now open, revealing an empty sink and a towel draped perfectly over the rack. Whoever had been in there was gone or hiding very, very well. I didn't eat. Couldn't. She sat across from me, sipping coffee, talking about something trivial. I think it was her coworker's engagement or a dog video she saw online. Her voice stayed light, her eyes flicking to me every now and then like she was taking my temperature. Waiting to see if I would boil over or play dumb. I chose dumb. But inside, I was turning over every little oddity from the past few weeks. The late nights. The gym trips to a place 40 minutes away. Her new tendency to shower twice a day. Her phone, once freely tossed onto the couch, now always face down, silent. All those little inconsistencies I'd dismissed, they weren't small anymore. They were puzzle pieces snapping together to form something jagged and painful. And right in the center of that picture was a navy wool jacket. After breakfast, she said she needed to run errands. Her voice still soft, still measured. I nodded. She kissed my cheek, said, "I'll be back in a bit," and slipped out the front door. As soon as I heard the engine start, I exhaled. I hadn't even realized I'd been holding my breath. I walked back to the jacket. It was still there. I turned it over again, more carefully this time. Nothing in the other pocket but a receipt and a candy wrapper. No name, no ID. No trace of Jeremy. I stood there for a long time, jacket in hand, trying to decide what to feel. Anger? Not yet. Confusion? Absolutely. But above all else, I felt a pit open in my stomach. A slow, sinking certainty that this morning was going to mark the beginning of something I couldn't unsee. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I had something else, the undeniable, gut-punch realization that the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had just lied to my face. And she was good at it. Too good. That night, I lay in bed with Roxanne curled up beside me, her breath even and steady. She fell asleep quickly, like someone who had nothing to hide. But me? I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, 1,000 thoughts firing off in my mind like popcorn kernels in oil. Something was wrong. I knew it deep in my chest now, that uncomfortable, undeniable knowing. And once you feel that, once your instincts sound the alarm, you can't go back to pretending everything's fine. So I started digging. Not in the way people think, not rifling through drawers or checking texts. Not yet. I just started, remembering. It was like rewinding a movie you didn't realize had been suspenseful until now. Roxanne started going to a new gym about 3 months ago. One that's way out in Westlake, nearly 40 minutes from our house. I remember asking her why that one, and she shrugged like it was nothing. Better machines. Less crowded. But she always seemed to come home glowing. Refreshed. The kind of glow I used to see after us. Except we hadn't really been us in a while. There were other signs. Subtle things I hadn't questioned before. Like the lingerie. Brand new. Tag still on some of it. She said she bought it just because, but she never wore it for me. Not once. Not even a hint. And I'm not the kind of guy who pressures or pesters, but I notice. I noticed how it sat folded in the back of the drawer, untouched, like it was waiting for a different stage. A different audience. And then there was her phone. Always on silent. Always face down. I hadn't paid much attention at first. People get weird with phones for all kinds of reasons. But one night, I saw it light up at 11:42 p.m. I didn't touch it. Didn't ask. Just watched her glance at the screen, flip it over quickly, and mumble something about a group chat. Group chat. Always the same excuse. Her behavior had changed in other ways too. She used to ask me how my day was really. We'd talk about projects, my coworkers, that annoying guy in my carpool. Now she didn't even pretend. Dinner had become a quiet affair. She'd serve up food, sit down across from me, and scroll through her phone with her fork in the other hand. Sometimes I'd try to start a conversation, but it felt like tossing pebbles into a canyon, just echoes and emptiness. She'd laugh at things on her screen but not share them. Smile to herself but look blank when I asked what was funny. It wasn't just emotional distance. It was something strategic. Calculated. Like she was building a wall brick by brick and I was on the outside watching her seal it shut. One time I came home early, not as early as the day with the jacket, and the house was perfectly staged. Candles lit. Soft music playing. She claimed she was just feeling cozy. But everything was too neat, too set up. Like a scene waiting for someone else to walk through the door. She started tracking me too, gently, at first. You headed to the office now? Still at the team dinner? What time do you think you'll be home tonight? Innocent questions. But relentless. And they always came at the exact moments I least expected them. Like she needed to know where I was so she could breathe easy again. One night, I left my phone on the kitchen counter while I showered. When I came back, the screen was off, but the notification preview said, "Find my iPhone. Roxanne just checked your location." I asked her about it casually. She laughed and said, "Oh, I didn't mean to. Just hit the wrong button." It was such a small moment. But in hindsight, it was a crack in the glass. I began seeing it everywhere. A pattern I couldn't unsee. The late night showers. The quick changes of clothes after errands. The way she suddenly cared about which cologne I used. Not to compliment me, but to note it. Like she was cataloging my scent. Making sure it didn't clash with anything else lingering on her. And her moods? They were mercurial. Some days she was all sunshine, acting like nothing was wrong. She'd sit next to me on the couch and try to engage, ask if I wanted to watch something, reach for my hand. But the moments never lasted. It felt rehearsed, like she was checking a box before disappearing again behind her phone screen or a new excuse to run out, just for a bit. Even her stories stopped making sense. She said her yoga class had moved to a different location, but the flyer on the fridge still had the old address. She mentioned meeting up with coworkers, but I never saw photos, never heard names. It was like her life was gradually being split in two. And the version I was getting, the version she let me see, felt like a second draft of a much more complicated script. I tried talking myself down, told myself I was being paranoid, that couples hit rough patches, that maybe I was just working too much, imagining things. But deep down I knew, this wasn't stress. This wasn't growing apart. This was a woman plotting her exit, and doing it so cleanly, so expertly, that I almost admired her for it. Almost. One night, I got up around 2 a.m. to grab some water. I passed by her office and saw the faint glow of her laptop. She had left it open, not something she normally did. I stood there for a second, staring at the screen. A message thread was open, but I couldn't make out the words. Just the timestamp. 1:47 a.m. Who was she messaging at that hour? Who was she laughing with in those sudden bursts that pulled her attention away from me like I didn't exist? I thought about confronting her a dozen times, but every time I got close, she shifted again. Softened her tone, brought home takeout from my favorite place, wore her hair the way she used to when we first met. It was a push-pull cycle. Keep me close enough to quiet suspicion, far enough to maintain the lie. I wasn't even angry yet. I was just tired. Tired of feeling like a guest in my own marriage. Tired of making space for someone who was clearly reserving her energy for a different life. One I wasn't invited to. But I wasn't ready to act. Not yet. Something in me needed confirmation, not just suspicion. Something undeniable. Something that couldn't be explained away with a smirk or a clever line about her cousin Jeremy. That's when I remembered the security system. I had installed it 2 years ago after a break-in scare in our neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a simple setup with a few motion sensors and 2 indoor cameras. One by the front entrance, one near the side door. I barely used the footage. Honestly, I'd forgotten about it. But now it felt like the one neutral observer left in the house. The one thing that might finally tell me the truth. I didn't look at the security footage right away. Truthfully, I was scared of what I might find. Scared of confirming the thing I already knew but hadn't yet forced myself to name. It's strange how the mind works. You can live in a state of near certainty, but until you have proof, there's still a door you haven't closed. Still room to hope. But hope had become more exhausting than the truth. It was a Thursday night when I finally sat down at my laptop. The lights low, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge and the distant tick of the hallway clock. Roxanne was out for drinks with coworkers. A phrase that by now barely registered. I didn't ask where. I didn't ask when she'd be back. She volunteered the details too eagerly, and I just nodded like I wasn't collecting evidence in my head. I logged into the home security portal and pulled up the past week's footage. The camera near the front door was mostly uneventful. Me leaving for work, deliveries, the occasional squirrel triggering the motion alert. Then I switched to the side door camera. And that's when everything changed. The timestamp read 2:13 p.m., 2 days earlier. I remembered that day because Roxanne had told me she was at the dentist. Routine cleaning, she said. Nothing major. She even texted me a picture of the waiting room with a little sticker that said, "Don't forget to floss." But there on the screen was a man I didn't recognize. He crept out through the side door barefoot, shoes in hand, moving quickly and cautiously. He glanced over his shoulder as he shut the door behind him, quiet, careful, like he knew exactly where the camera was and hoped it wasn't on. Tall, athletic build, wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. Hair slightly disheveled. No jacket. I rewound the footage. At 1:28 p.m., the camera had picked up motion again. The same man entering, same clothes, same posture, but this time he knocked once and entered without hesitation. Like he'd done it before. I stared at the screen, the playback looping, watching this stranger slide through my home like he owned it. Like I didn't exist. Everything else disappeared, the furniture, the soft lighting, even the security system that was supposed to protect us. All I saw was the quiet betrayal etched into each of his movements. He wasn't a burglar. He wasn't lost. He was welcome. I sat there motionless. I don't even remember breathing. My hands hovered above the keyboard, unsure of what to do next. A part of me expected to feel rage, to punch something, scream into the walls, call her, and demand answers. But none of that came. Instead, I felt something deeper. Colder. A severing. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was truth. Caught in 1080p. Time-stamped. Undeniable. I downloaded the footage. Transferred it to a flash drive. Then I turned off all the cameras. Every single one. If she was going to continue whatever it was she was doing, I didn't want it recorded. I didn't need to keep watching the slow-motion wreckage of my marriage. I hid the flash drive in the back of my desk drawer under a pile of tax receipts and warranty papers. Not because I needed to revisit it, but because I needed to know it was there, something solid to hold onto when doubt tried to crawl back in. Roxanne got home around 11 that night. Smelled like gin and lavender shampoo. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes a little too bright. "Sorry I'm late," she said, toeing off her heels at the door. It turned into a whole thing. Melissa's fiancé showed up drunk and we had to drive him home. I nodded. "Sounds wild." She smiled, relieved I wasn't pressing. "Yeah. You had dinner already?" "Yeah." She walked past me, her hand grazing my shoulder. "Gonna take a quick shower," she said, her voice trailing off as she disappeared down the hall. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the spot where she had stood not 15 seconds ago, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was sharing a home with a stranger. And the worst part? She didn't even seem sorry. I didn't bring it up. I didn't mention the footage, the man, the timing. I didn't ask her about the dentist appointment or the missing jacket that had miraculously vanished from our chair 2 days ago. I said nothing. Because I needed to be sure of something else before I acted. I needed to be sure of me. Over the next few days, I played the role. I was calm. Present. Pleasant. I asked about her work, told her about a guy at the office who kept stealing people's yogurt from the fridge. She laughed, kissed me on the cheek one morning and said I smelled good. For a brief second, I almost believed we were okay. But every time she smiled at me, I saw his shadow in the corner of the room. I started taking mental inventory. Our conversations, her clothes, her routines. I memorized the lies as they came, not out of obsession, but preparation. I was gearing up for something, and I didn't want to leave anything to chance. One evening, while she was in the shower, I found her gym bag slung over the chair in her office. It wasn't zipped. I didn't mean to look, but my hands moved before my mind could object. Inside, there was no gym gear. No towel. No water bottle. Just a dress, short, sleek, deep red, and a pair of heels wrapped in a plastic bag. Tucked beneath them was a travel-sized perfume bottle and a tube of lipstick I didn't recognize. I zipped the bag back up and left it where I found it. She emerged minutes later, towel around her shoulders, humming a song she used to play in the car when we first started dating. That hurt more than anything. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to her, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to demand apologies or explanations or tearful confessions that would come too late to mean anything. No, I was going to leave. Not out of cowardice, but because I refused to participate in the unraveling any longer. I didn't want to see her spiral, didn't want to hear the excuses, the guilt that it didn't mean anything else. I was done letting her rent space in my head while she gave herself to someone else. I started planning my exit in silence. Small things at first, gathering documents, backing up files, preparing my finances. I stopped leaving anything of importance in shared spaces. I opened a new bank account under a different branch. Set up a private P.O. box. Little moves. Quiet moves. She didn't notice. Of course she didn't. She was too busy making her own exit. She just didn't realize mine would be the one that stuck. The last thing I did was pack a single overnight bag. Just enough to disappear without fanfare. I kept it in the trunk of my car. Every day, I walked past her in the kitchen, drank coffee while she texted God knows who, kissed her goodbye at the door, and knew that soon, none of this would be mine anymore. And strangely, that thought didn't terrify me. It freed me. Sunday morning was the quietest one yet. The sky outside was overcast, the kind of gray that made everything look like it was being seen through a fogged-up window. I made coffee like I always did, sat in the same kitchen chair, stared out at the backyard as the steam from my mug curled up into nothing. Roxanne was still asleep. Or at least, she was in the bedroom with the door closed. She didn't hear me leave. I didn't slam anything. Didn't make a show. No suitcase at the door. No scattered clothes or empty hangers. Everything I took had already been removed in pieces quietly, methodically, over the past few weeks. That morning, all I left behind were my house keys, my ID, and my bank card. They sat in a perfect little line on the kitchen counter next to the empty coffee mug. I almost left a note, but what would I even write? I know? I hope he was worth it? None of it seemed necessary. She'd know soon enough. The sound the front door made as it closed behind me was softer than I expected. No dramatic thud. No echo. Just a gentle click as I walked out of the home we'd built together, now nothing more than a well-decorated lie. And I didn't look back. No dramatic pause on the front steps. No deep breath or final glance. I simply got in the car and drove, the bag I'd packed days ago sitting in the trunk like a passport to a life that had yet to begin. I stayed at a friend's place for a while, an old college buddy named Jonah who had always told me I deserved better, even when I'd laughed it off. He didn't ask questions when I showed up with nothing but a duffel bag and tired eyes. Just handed me a beer and said, "Whatever you need, man." I turned off my phone for the first 24 hours. I didn't want to see her calls or texts. Didn't want to hear her voice trying to pin my absence on confusion or cowardice or miscommunication. I didn't want apologies she didn't mean or explanations I didn't ask for. She'd had her chance. Dozens of them. And every time she chose someone else over me. I logged into Instagram once. Just once. It was the night after I left. She had hosted a girls' night. No joke. There she was, smiling on someone's story, dressed up, holding a wine glass, laughing like someone who hadn't just been left by her husband. Like someone who was relieved. What struck me wasn't just the ease of it. It was what she said in the background of one of the clips. The music was loud, but you could hear her voice clear as day. I mean, honestly, it feels like a weight's been lifted. A weight. That's what I was to her. I stared at my phone for a long time after that, trying to decide if it even stung. But it didn't, not really. Because by then I already knew she was gone. Emotionally, she checked out months ago. This was just the first time she said it out loud. I didn't text her. Didn't call. Didn't show up at the house or send cryptic emails. I simply vanished, just like she did, except I did it with intention. And then, like clockwork, the roles reversed. The woman who once walked past me like I was wallpaper began reaching out. A text the next morning. Another by lunch. A string of missed calls. She went from silence to panic almost overnight. I watched the messages pour in from my laptop where everything was synced. I didn't respond, but I read them. Every single one. Where are you? Please just talk to me. This isn't funny, Cam. You left without saying anything. I deserve better than this. That one made me laugh. Out loud. The audacity of it. She deserved better? She had been carving me out of our life with surgical precision for months, and now that I finally left, she wanted to rewrite the narrative. She started getting creative after that. Sarcasm. Guilt. Suddenly, she missed me. Suddenly, I was the love of her life again. I guess absence really does make the heart grow fonder, especially when you don't expect it. A few days later, she sent a picture of my favorite hoodie with a caption, "Is this what you want? Just to disappear?" Yeah, rocks. That's exactly what I wanted. To disappear from the world where I was nothing more than a placeholder in your curated little life. I didn't answer. Instead, I threw myself into something new. Something clean. Jonah helped me set up a temporary office at his place, and I dove headfirst into work. It wasn't a distraction, it was a reclaiming. Of time. Of energy. Of self-worth. Each day that passed without hearing her voice was a small victory. Meanwhile, she tried everything. She posted throwbacks on social media, old trips, candid sh*ts of us smiling at dinner, captioned with vague lines like, "Some things are worth fighting for." She even sent me a playlist once. Songs we used to love. I didn't listen. I just deleted the email. She told mutual friends that I was going through something and shutting down emotionally. I stayed quiet. Let her paint her version. It didn't matter. The people who mattered knew the truth. The rest? They were just bystanders to a play that had already ended. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was staying gone. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I should have confronted her before walking out. Wondering if I should have demanded answers or given her the chance to beg. But then I remembered the footage. The jacket. The lie about the dentist. The way she laughed on Instagram while my side of the bed was cold. And I knew silence was the best closure I could ever give her. She called Jonah once. That's how desperate it got. He didn't answer. Just sent me a screenshot of the missed call with the caption, "She's getting bold." I nodded. She's spiraling. He looked at me for a second, then asked something I hadn't expected. Do you miss her? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. I missed the early days when her eyes lit up at the sound of my name. When she used to leave notes in my glove box or send texts that said, "Just thinking of you." I missed the version of her that existed before all the secrecy, the deception, the slow erosion of something sacred. But the real Roxanne? The one who lied effortlessly, who laughed at a party while I vanished? No. I didn't miss her. I pitied her. Because no matter how many wine nights she hosted, no matter how many stories she curated online, deep down she knew. She had burned something that couldn't be rebuilt. And eventually even she would have to sit with that. I expected anger, retaliation, maybe even a confrontation. But what I got instead was silence. She stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped posting. Just stopped. That was the real shift. Not my leaving, not her partying, but the moment she finally realized that I wasn't coming back. That the game she'd been playing didn't end in some dramatic showdown. It ended with me gone. Not with rage. Not with revenge. Just with a quiet, deliberate goodbye. I don't think she expected the silence. Roxanne had spent months scripting her exit, slowly, cleverly, and with just enough emotional breadcrumbing to keep me numb. But when I flipped the script and walked out without confrontation, she didn't know what to do. And that's when the real performance began. It started subtly, like little ripples in still water. A random meme she texted me about dogs wearing sunglasses. I didn't reply. Then it was a photo of the beach somewhere we'd visited during our second anniversary with no caption, just a heart emoji. Again, no response. Then came the shift. Suddenly, the messages weren't gentle reminders of better days. They were accusations. Guilt trips dressed as concern. She sent a long one night at 1:13 a.m., the kind of time people usually reserve for confessions or desperate pleas. You just left. No explanation. No conversation. How's that fair? I gave you so much of my life, Cameron. You owed me more than a vanishing act. I read it. Closed the message. Let it rot in the cloud of her own making. Because the truth was I didn't owe her anything anymore. But she kept trying. Not every day, not in obvious ways. That would have been too honest. Too raw. No, Roxanne preferred control. She knew how to layer her manipulation like a pro, sweet on the surface, poisoned underneath. She showed up at Jonah's place once. I hadn't given her the address. She must have pieced it together from an old party photo, a license plate, something small I'd overlooked. She knocked. Stood there in a beige coat and a fake smile like she wasn't here to play another role. Jonah opened the door. I was in the back room and I heard the conversation like a stage play I'd already seen. "Hey," she said, like it was casual. "Is Cameron here?" "No," Jonah replied. "He's not taking visitors." Her voice dropped an octave. "I just need 5 minutes." Jonah didn't flinch. He said, "If you showed up, I should remind you this isn't a movie. He's not coming down for a dramatic speech." A pause. Then her voice again, softer. "I just want to fix things." Jonah closed the door without saying another word. She didn't ring again. But the next day I got an email. A long one. For paragraphs, each one more desperate than the last. She cycled through everything: anger, nostalgia, vulnerability, and finally what she thought was a trump card: love. "I know I messed up. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. I've always loved you. You were my home, Cam. Please don't turn your back on us." I didn't respond. Because I knew what she was really saying wasn't, "I love you." It was, "I missed the power I had when you needed me." And she had lost that. Completely. I kept living. It was strange at first, waking up in a house that didn't smell like her shampoo or have her keys jangling on the counter. But slowly, something beautiful happened. I started to breathe again. I rebuilt routines from scratch. Went for runs before sunrise. Read books that had been collecting dust for years. Made coffee just the way I liked it without worrying whether she'd complain about the mess or the grind size. I reclaimed my time. I called my sister more. Visited my mom. I even reached out to old friends I'd let fade into the background when I was too busy catering to Roxanne's schedule. One of them, Nate, said something that stuck with me. "You seem lighter, man. Like the version of you I remember before she started editing you." Editing me. God, that hit hard. That's what she had done. Slowly. Over time. She chipped away at parts of me that didn't fit into her vision. Changed how I dressed, what music I liked, who I spent time with. All under the illusion of growing together. But it wasn't growth. It was erosion. And now, without her, I was finally regrowing. She tried one last thing. A letter. Handwritten. Delivered to Jonah's mailbox like some scene out of a romance film. I didn't read it. I saw the handwriting, the familiar curve of her capital R, and slid the envelope back into the drawer. Unopened. Untouched. Because whatever she had to say now, it wasn't for me. It was for the version of me that still wanted to be convinced. And that version was gone. She never apologized for what really mattered. Never mentioned the man from the footage. Never asked if I knew. Because deep down, she was hoping I didn't. Hoping she could rewrite the story into something clean, digestible. We grew apart. He shut down emotionally. We lost our spark. But I had the proof. And with it, I had my closure. There was no spark lost. No growing apart. There was only betrayal. Quiet, calculated, and unforgivable. In the absence of my reaction, she began to unravel. Friends stopped mentioning her. Mutual acquaintances grew quiet. I heard whispers that she'd started skipping work. That she'd gone through a string of short, exhausting flings. That she told people I had left her without explanation because the real explanation would have meant admitting who she really was. But I didn't care. Her version of the story didn't matter anymore. Not to me. The only truth I needed was the one I lived every day, the piece of a life without her manipulations. People say moving on is about healing. About forgiving. But sometimes it's not about forgiveness. It's about indifference. And I had finally found mine. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. No more messages. No more emails. Just silence. And I let it stretch. I imagined Roxanne staring at her phone, refreshing her inbox, hoping for a crack in the wall I'd built. But that crack never came. Because unlike her, I didn't need a second round of closure. I already knew how the story ended. She just hadn't read that far yet. And then, nothing. From friends, I heard whispers how she'd grown distant, how the bubbly, sharp-tongued Roxanne had turned strangely quiet. That the people she used to host wine nights for had stopped getting invites. She'd pull out her phone to text someone, then stop mid-thought. Set it down. Stare at it like it was supposed to answer something she couldn't ask. They said she still wore her ring some days. Said she started telling people I left because I was struggling with things. I didn't respond. Let her have the fiction. Truth wasn't something she'd ever worn comfortably. One night, cold, clear, and still, Roxanne sat alone in her house, the one I used to call home, writing a letter she'd never send. She'd admit, just to herself, just once, that she had built the distance on purpose. That her coldness wasn't a symptom of unhappiness, but a way to create space for a new life without me in it. She'd remember the man's jacket and how fast she'd tucked it into the back of the closet after I left. She'd remember telling herself she was just confused. That it wasn't cheating if it hadn't gone too far. That she could fix it all later. But there is no later when someone walks away quietly. There's just the echo. She folded the letter, left it in a drawer, and went to bed alone. It was almost 3 months to the day when I saw her again. By accident. By fate. Or maybe just timing. A university panel on creative marketing strategies. I'd been invited as a guest speaker. Jonah thought it'd be good for me. New faces, new space. Something forward-facing. I didn't know she'd be there. She walked in halfway through the session, laughing beside a guy in a blazer who held her bag like he knew the weight of it. They sat 2 rows back. She didn't see me at first. Not until I stepped onto the stage. Our eyes met. For 1 heartbeat. 2. She froze. He looked at her, confused, then followed her gaze. I didn't break eye contact. Didn't smirk. Didn't flinch. Just held it long enough to let her know I saw her. Not just in that moment, but fully. The real her. And then I looked away. Finished my talk. Walked off stage. Never looked back. That was the real ending, not an argument, not an apology, not a breakdown in the rain. Just a glance in a crowded room between 2 people who used to know each other deeply and now meant nothing at all. She stayed in her seat. And I kept walking forward. Free.